Hello. So the point of this video is when I just Googled in YouTube, I didn't really find any videos that talk about how to kind of read and go about memorizing a pattern. Today I'm just going to be talking about showmanship, horsemanship, and equitation, simply because in 4-H and open shows that tends to be some of the events that are there, at least locally for myself, and in our state. And I assume, at least in the US, that those are fairly common events too. But I believe that these things would be applicable for other events like reining or a jumping pattern and other things like that. So when you start and you get to your show, if the patterns aren't sent to you beforehand, you normally see the patterns for the first time at the show. And the first thing when I was showing, once I got better at reading patterns, please note that this took many years. I've showed horses for 10 years. And the first thing that I do when I pick out or see my pattern is right here in the red. Number one, what is the judge going to actually look for? Because we can look at the pattern, and I've picked out patterns that I feel are fairly simple. I got them from AQHA. They have a online ebook of patterns for each of these 3 events, and I've just picked out ones that seemed fairly simple. The horsemanship, of course, is a little bit more to it, but it'll be fine. So what's the judge looking for? Because bottom line, that's who you're showing to. That's the person that is judging you. So for this first pattern here, which is a showmanship pattern, this shape and the lines in it. So when they give you a pattern, especially with something with only 2 cones, and you'll see that with some of the others, there's only 1 or 2 cones, you kind of get to pick where you put your pattern. And of course, for an open show or a 4-H show, I would expect there would probably be a cone here, but there might not be. And for some of the other ones, there might be another cone, but there again might not be. So we're just going to go off of the patterns that are here. So you can kind of see, at least where it's drawn, and that's something else I'll try and get to. For where it's drawn, it looks like where you change your halfway point of your pattern should be here with the judge. So if we look at our directions, and another thing, you always go off of the written directions with the pattern. The drawing is just a suggestion. It's what it should look like, but the wording always takes precedence of, well, I don't know how to fix that, precedence over what's happening. So you walk half line, which some of the wordings for these are a little bit weirder, but it basically means walk halfway up your line. Then you trot around the end and down line, so it's just make a curve. Halt and execute a 3/4 turn. So for that, you would then be facing the judge. Walk to the judge, set up for inspection. After inspection, 1/4 turn, and trot to the marker and stop. Exit at a walk or trot. So realistically, there's not really any difficult elements in here. Like, there's no tight square corners, there's no really difficult backing, there's no like really tight turns. I mean, if they set this up really small, there would be, but for the most part, it's a fairly simple pattern. And the things that the judge is going to be looking for in a pattern that's simple is the exact spot where you do, or where you change things. So your transitions, your stops, your pivots, that's where they're going to be looking and seeing where someone can edge out the other based on where they do that. So for this pattern, a lot happens right in front of the judge, really. Like, they have a very clear line for where they're standing. And even when you trot away from them, they can just turn and you're right there. So they will be able to know right away if you start walking or start trotting way back here or not until you're already up here. So for me, with my rule of thumb, because the horse is going to be on your right side, so you're going to be over here. Or, well, not over there, but you're going to be on the left. So depending on how tall you are, depending on how tall your horse is, you know, I generally, at a walk and trot, out of my peripheral, so look straight ahead, don't turn your head and look at the judge, but looking straight ahead, pretend there's a post down here or something you're walking towards. When you can no longer see the judge out of your peripheral, I take another step, and then I would start. If you walk really fast or have a really big horse, you might want to do it right away. If you have a really small horse, you know, this should be like right when you can no longer see them out of your peripheral or one more step. So you nail that, good job. Then you come up and this curve. So this, if you think about it, is halfway between these two markers. So when you're making this curve, I would start my curve, and when I'm here, so just at the start of your turn, already pick where's that halfway point and stare, like find something at that halfway point to look at. So you're going to make your curve, and throughout your curve you're going to be looking where you want to end up. You don't want to be here and staring out over here. You don't want to be here and staring over here. That doesn't help you. You want to look where you're going. Even more so in riding events. But once you kind of get a feel for guessing your distances, and again, that takes practice. Once you get better at that, then once you stop here, you want this to be a hip stop. So what I mean, and what other people traditionally mean when they say hip stop, is when you come up here and you stop, since you have to pivot and then walk up to the judge, that means that your horse, you want them ideally when you're done with your pivot to be in line with the judge. So that means when you pivot and you're pivoting on the back right hind, you want that back right hind foot to be in line with the judge. So you want to go horse length past the judge. And no, again, every horse is different size-wise, every person's stride is different size-wise. But for me, I'm 5'8"-ish, and my horse that I showed for a long time was 15'2", 15'3"-ish. She had a fairly large stride for her size, but it wasn't like crazy. And we traditionally, when I was showing her, I would take 2 steps. So I'm trotting along, peripheral. As soon as the judge is out of my peripheral, I take 1, 2, stop. So if I'm really cruising, or if you're trotting very fast, I would maybe only do 1. If you're trotting really, really slow, or if you have a horse with a very short stride, you might want to do a little bit more. And again, this is practice. You can practice out in a field, or, you know, your pasture, wherever you are. Pick something that you miss your peripheral, or you see in your peripheral as you're trotting. Count 2 steps, 3 steps, 1 step, however. Stop, pivot, see if you're lined up. And again, that takes practice. It's different for the horse, different for the person, so that just takes practice to figure out. So you stopped. You did a wonderful hip stop. You do your 3/4 turn pivot, and you're in line with the judge. Good job. So get up to the judge. I'm assuming, because there's a lot of videos you can see and watch on YouTube, I'm assuming you already can pivot, walk, trot. You know what inspection is. You know what the quarter system is. You know when to cross over. You know how to. I'm not getting into that. I'm just worrying about you figuring out how this pattern should be read and what the judge is looking for and how to memorize and execute it. So after you're done with your inspection, quarter turn, walk or trot to your marker, stop, and go. So back in the days of old, when I was like, a kid, when you stopped at that last marker, I was always told, turn and look at the judge, nod to them, make sure you acknowledge them before you leave, and then go. That kind of died. If you watch like quarter horse shows and things, that doesn't happen anymore. If you want to see kind of what is happening, what's kind of trending, air quotes trending, look at quarter horse. So don't look back. Just stop, hesitate, take a deep breath, and then just exit. You don't need to stand there for like 30 seconds. You don't need to wait for the judge to acknowledge you, because they're probably already looking. The next person's set up and probably ready to go by the time that you're, stopped here. So doesn't really matter. Like, don't look back. So judge is going to be looking, is this line straight? Are you halfway here? Is your stop a hip stop? Are you in line with them when you're done? When you exit, is this straight? Is this an actual 90? Is this an actual 3/4 turn? So a lot of these things, when it comes to memorizing them and executing them, if you, break it up, so just do like 2 of these things. So the walk and the trot, and your stop. So if you think about it, you're really only doing bits and pieces. So when you're practicing a pattern, unless it's something really, really difficult or specific, like backing, a serpentine, or, something really unique like that, it's really just bits and pieces that you're just putting together in the correct order. So for the most part, it doesn't really matter. Like, your layout is important, yes. But when it comes to practicing your pattern, run through it a couple times, get a feel for it. Practice before you go into the pen. I don't care if you gotta grab someone's boots or a can of hairspray. Stick some stuff out here, kidnap your mom, dad, whoever brought you, or if you're by yourself, stick another cone or something here, and just, pretend someone's walking around you. Practice it. Give yourself these markers. And, do that maybe 2 or 3 times. I mean, if you have a younger horse that you have issues, for that, or if you're just starting and you're really nervous, like, you can practice it a couple more times. But for the most part, I mean, once you get used to going to shows and doing patterns and stuff, you really won't need to run through it more than like 2 or 3 times. And you'll find, everyone has off days. You'll find, oh goodness, my horse is having a hard time pivoting today, or oh my goodness, I am having a hard time doing proper hip stop. So run through your patterns twice, figure out what you're struggling with, and then don't like drill the pattern so much that you're like dead to it. And then go fix those things. If you're having trouble doing hip stops, do random hip stops to, if there's horse trailers around or random people or something. Do a hip stop with a random person and be like, okay, yeah, you can do a hip stop now. It doesn't need to be that you're drilling this pattern for, 20 minutes before your class. And then again, if you have the pattern, like normally people just take photos now, of course, on your phone, but make sure you have the pattern. So if the same pattern is done ahead of time, take the time to watch a couple people ahead of you, and then you can see, man, a lot of people, when they're doing their pattern, are like turning really, really tight or turning really, really big, and they're ending up here, so they're not having any room, or they're having too much room. And then you, because you watch these people, will be able to fix those issues, and the judge will say, wow, this person was paying attention. So I see that I've been talking for darn near 15 minutes about one pattern, but that just goes to show, even with something that's relatively simple, there's a lot that a judge can look for in it, and a lot that can be taken out of it. So I'm going to talk about the equitation in the next little installment of this, I think. So hopefully this helped you, and hopefully you also are interested in equitation and horsemanship. Thank you.